also did standardized testing as the other groups did as well. Our research question was, does standardized testing promote the skills that students in the K through 12 schooling need as a whole? How we decided on the research question was, it's like they said, a hot topic right now, brought up in the current presidential campaign. Most of us have gone through standardized testing in intermediate school, so it's kind of relevant. It's interesting and intriguing, and also relatable to all of us. Okay.
History of standardized testing. Well, as we looked at like the history, we found that like most of, well, the first like evidence of standardized testing started in China actually. It was used to evaluate or like critique government workers and like public officials, and then in the West, the more common form of testing was essays and stuff like that, which can be traced back to the Greek or ancient times, and then like I think around the late 1800s to like 1900s, it sort of made its way to the West, and that's how we ended up with standardized testing. So as we can see in the slide, says ever since the turn of the century, it's more or less been critiqued over the years because of the heavy bureaucracy that is involved around standardized testing. But it's also, but those that are that argue for it mainly see it as like the most affordable way to actually evaluate and look at like the level of education that students are actually receiving. I don't know if that's the case today, but it's an argument that is often used. And it's also said that like mostly when we want to like review the education system, some form of testing is done really to see how if students across the country or like are like receiving the same level of education, or the learning abilities are the same as well. So like, because we all want students to be on the same level of educational ability.
For our sources, when we first started this project, we all had similar opinions regarding standardized testing. And for me, I didn't agree with it, and I just think that it doesn't promote the skills that children need. And I don't think a lot of teachers really like it because they have to teach a certain way instead of their own personal way. And they can't really have a lot of their own tests because all of the tests are the same.
Okay, so the answer, which we put in the findings section, is that standardized testing does not promote the skills that students need. We're overwhelmed and over-tested. One of the sources from the Washington Post says that a U.S. student will have taken 112 standardized tests throughout their K through 12 schooling, whereas most countries who outperform the United States in education will only give students 3 standardized tests in their entire student careers, which is mind-blowing. That's a lot of tests that were given. It's a lot of stress and anxiety put on young kids from kindergarten. And it's a one-size-fits-all curriculum, and studies show that it's not working at all. It's neglecting individuality in students and neglecting interpersonal skills. We're just teaching to a base, not to your personal skills.
This is just a graph of the different disabilities that students have when they take tests. Some can have a shortened test or read out loud or have like a dictated response. And some children are better at math than others, just like some students can be better at English than others. it also doesn't help that each test is the same because it can rise the cheating rate throughout the United States. And throughout our project, I would say that our opinions remain the same as they did in the beginning, and if anything, after doing research, it just made our opinions more confident that we didn't agree. And then this is standardized testing throughout the whole United States, and the blue is where standardized testing isn't mandatory, and then the yellow is mandatory as of right now, and then the orangish, I guess, it's not mandatory yet, but preparations are being made, and then the green is you have to pass a standardized test in order to grant a waiver from the school.
Okay. So how we developed the answer. Many of our sources did lean towards arguing against standardized testing, so that did help to back up our thesis. But we also made sure that we analyzed both sides to make sure our essay wasn't too biased. I found a cartoon of like teachers and then putting pressure on the kid as if it's both pressure to the child and the teacher, which is kind of relevant to some of the information we put in our essay.
Okay. So as Gwen had mentioned earlier, part of the reason why we picked this topic was because of the controversy around it, and also the current political climate we were facing at the time, given the U.S. presidential elections. So this is a topic that is primarily very controversial amongst, as we see, educators, policymakers, parents, students, and also politicians, as we had seen with the different candidates that had been running. And yeah, so each of the four presidential candidates that were running had their own viewpoints or policy stances on Common Core. So as we look at, starting off with the President-elect Donald Trump, he had reportedly said during the Republican primary debates that we're going to be cutting, and I quote, by the way, we're going to be cutting tremendous amounts of money and waste and fraud and abuse. But no, I'm not cutting services, but I'm cutting spending. But I may cut the Department of Education. Common Core is a very bad thing. I think that it should be local education. If you look at a Jeb Bush and some of these others, they want children to be educated by Washington D.C. bureaucrats. And the source comes from Fox News Sunday 2015 coverage of the 2016 presidential hopefuls, which, as I had mentioned, was the Republican primary debates. Hillary Clinton had reportedly said, and I quote, it comes from an article from, Breitbart, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. She says she has always supported national education standards and that she wants to see the same set of common standards for all public schools across the nation. And as I said, the source is from Breitbart, Hillary Clinton on Common Core, author Dr. Susan Berry. And the date is 18th of April 2016. And other candidates as well, Gary Johnson, he reportedly said no education should be handled at the state, but it should be handled at local and it shouldn't be handled at national level, but it should be handled at state and local level. It's from source I Side With. I Side With is presidential. It's a political survey site that is primarily used around elections, to mainly geared to candidates or like voters that are undecided, to see which candidates they want to pick, or or the ideology falls closely with. And Jill Stein, Jill Stein, I think she was a lot more detailed in dealing with Common Core, as she says, and I quote, in general, high stakes testing is more than counterproductive, it is destructive. It is used as a political tool against teachers targeting low income and people of color. Our educational system should target lifetime learning with full and equitable funding and eliminating disparities by race. Testing for diagnostic purposes are parts of standards. Curriculum written by teachers, not by corporate contractors. And the sources, it was from a phone interview, presidential race on the issues.org, and July 6, 2015. And that's it, really. All right, thank you.